Zeke-san was a member of a party known as B Rank, Crimson Lotus Fong, along with two girls, Hannah and Irene, and one man named Nihat, who was the boss of the party. As they stood together, bird-like creatures ran towards them, seemingly to threaten them. However, they remained unfazed and did not appear to care. As they waited for the right moment to attack the bird-like creatures, Nihat ordered Zeke to stay where he was and not to come with him. Zeke accepted this order and stayed put. One of the girls signaled to Nihat to get ready for her attack, as they prepared to engage in battle with bird-like creatures. Despite his initial order to Zeke, Nihat told him to take a defensive position, while instructing Hannah and Irene to cover his back. As they ran towards the bird-like creatures and began attacking, one of the girls hyped up Nihat, who responded confidently and boastfully. They quickly killed the bird-like creatures and won the battle, or so they thought. There was two left, and Zeke defended the two girls when it tried to attack them from behind. Zeke only took a defensive action by holding the bird-like creatures back, but this did not please Nihat. He was angry and disgusted that Zeke only defended the bird-like creatures and did not kill it. Nihat even went so far to call Zeke a scarecrow. After the battle, they all returned back to the town Esther. The people of the guild praised Nihat. Nihat was pompous and responded to the people that the quest was so easy for him and his party. While they were standing, some guy came and asked Hannah and Irene if they wanted to transfer to his party, but they rejected his proposal. The receptionist girl approached Zeke and appreciated him for his good work in the fight, but Zeke humbly accepted the praise, thinking he hadn't done as much. Listening to the conversation, Nihat looked on with jealousy. Unexpectedly, he announced to the entire party that Zeke had been fired from the team. The patrons drinking nearby were shocked, and Zeke himself, taken aback, asked why. Nihat responded aggressively and told Zeke that the party specialized in offense, while Zeke was more focused on defense. Therefore, he was less suitable for the team than other members. Feeling angry and disappointed because Zeke didn't take offensive action, Nihat told him that the party didn't need a coward. He then turned to Hannah and Irene, seeking their opinions. He seemed manipulative, indirectly pressuring the girls to agree with him. Though they appeared concerned for Zeke, both reluctantly stated that focusing solely on defense was wrong and that he should have been more offensive. Zeke, disheartened, explained that he hadn't just been standing around, he had been taking actions that he believed benefited the party. He assured everyone that he was fulfilling his role and not dragging the party down. However, Nihat replied by asking if being beaten by Pulp was his role, and if he was nothing but a scarecrow. Nihat then got closer to Zeke and told him that the party did not need someone who was unmoving like a scarecrow, and that he was not on their level. Zeke became very sad and decided to leave the party. Nihat seemed gleeful when Zeke finally left the party and made it clear that he was disgusted by Zeke's presence, commenting on how Zeke being there was just a waste of the accommodation fee. With a sarcastic tone, he bid Zeke farewell, calling him Scarecrow, despite Nihat's persistent interest in Zeke. Hannah and Irene appeared saddened by his departure. Both of them were visibly unhappy when Zeke thanked them and left. Zeke began reminiscing about the very first time the party began and how things were back then. At the outset, all of the teammates were cooperative and everybody backed up their teammates' mistakes. But since Crimson Lotus Fong became famous, Nihat started to think differently. Thinking that the party had strong power, Nihat started to focus on offense and began to look down others uncaringly. Zeke then decided to return to the guild. As he arrived, the receptionist girl who worked there approached him and asked why he was alone and not with his party teammates. Zeke was there to complete the procedure of leaving the party so he could take on another job. He then informed her that he had been fired from the party. Upon hearing this, the girl was so shocked that she couldn't believe it was true. She then asked him what he was going to do. Considering that no party would most probably want a guy who got fired, Zeke had already decided to quit being an adventurer. "That's a shame," she muttered to herself. Zeke had already been contemplating quitting the job and finding another, considering its instability. He told her that he was going to search for a stable job. The girl suddenly had an idea and asked Zeke if he wanted to hear her suggestion. Zeke was interested and willing to listen. The royal capital, Outo, had a shortage of gatekeepers, and she believed that Zeke's specialization in defense made him suitable for the job. She promised to write a recommendation letter to support his application. Zeke accepted the suggestion and went to the royal capital, Astaroth. Upon arriving, he found 2 soldiers guarding the gate. He explained why he had come and showed them the recommendation letter from the guild. The soldiers meticulously examined his passport and the letter. Zeke asked them if the situation in the city was terrible, as it seemed like they were being thorough. The city was indeed in trouble. It was under repeated monster attacks, and its people and resources were exhausted. The merchants couldn't come due to the danger, and there was a shortage of supplies. The soldiers were amazed to have someone interested in the job. After they finished checking Zeke's personal information, they found out that he was a B-rank adventurer. Zeke explained that it was in the past and didn't matter anymore. The soldiers had already heard rumors about him, but Zeke didn't understand and asked them what the rumors were. They quickly changed the subject and gave him back his passport and recommendation letter, instructing him to go to the office of the chief guard Bolton. Zeke was confused about what the soldiers were trying to say. They weren't sure if they could rely on him since he was a fired adventurer. Zeke arrived at the office of the chief guard and presented his documents. After reading Zeke's application, the chief guard informed him that unlike adventurers, they could not run away when a threat arises. He further added that the job had a low salary, involved facing death every day, and was looked down upon by knights. The chief guard asked Zeke if he still wanted to continue with his application, and if he was ready for the job, which had the worst working conditions. Zeke, having no other option, quickly said yes. The chief guard then informed him that he would have to take a test to assess his capabilities. The test began with Zeke being on the defensive and not allowed to attack. Chief Bolton had prepared 3 opponents for the test. While the chief was explaining the rules of the test, Zeke's opponents were gossiping about him and the rumor of him being called a scarecrow. They underestimated Zeke's physical capabilities as he looked weak. There was a ball behind Zeke, and the test was to defend the ball as his opponents attempted to take it down. The ball represented the people of the city, and the whole point of the test was to see if Zeke could let the enemy pass him to reach the ball, or if he would defend the ball. The chief explained to Zeke that they had no room for someone who was unqualified and weak, since the city had so many troubles. Hiring unqualified guards would only lead to disasters. The chief stressed to Zeke that if he wanted to be hired, he needed to have the ability to protect the people and the treasure in the city. "Got it, Zeke," said one of the 3 enemies. The other one, following his friend's lead, told Zeke to convince them that he was useful while looking at him in a very disrespectful way. Zeke got prepared and declared the beginning of the fight. Zeke found himself in a difficult situation as he was outnumbered by 3 opponents. However, rather than attacking, he decided to wear them out as he usually does. One of the enemies tried to distract him with a funny facial expression, but Zeke remained calm and focused. As the enemy approached and swung his sword in Zeke's face, he simply turned aside, causing the enemy to fall to the ground. The second enemy saw an opening and rushed towards Zeke, but he was not an easy target. Zeke swiftly took the enemy down and held his sword to the enemy's face, warning him that he would have killed him in a real fight. The chief was impressed with Zeke's skillful use of his shield and sword, and he watched as Zeke skillfully defended himself against the 2 opponents. The first enemy got up from the ground and tried to attack Zeke again, but Zeke managed to evade and attack and continue to defend himself. The chief found Zeke's calmness and precise moves to be the most fascinating thing, despite facing multiple opponents. One of the opponents thrust his spear directly at Zeke, but Zeke managed to defend the attack with ease. The opponents were left speechless and amazed by Zeke's skill and timing. After successfully completing the test, the chief added more opponents for Zeke to face. This time, the opponents were many and coming from behind. Zeke was unaware of their presence until the chief warned him that if they break the ball, he wouldn't be hired. The previous opponents were excited to see Zeke on the verge of losing. The chief reminded Zeke that as the gatekeeper, his job was to protect the city no matter what. The enemies were catching up to the ball and were closer than Zeke, leading the chief to question whether Zeke was losing this round. Zeke remained focused and replied confidently that he was not losing. He suddenly shouted, "Iron target!" Zeke then drew the attacker's attention to himself, and they all aimed their swords at him. However, Zeke's impeccable defense allowed him to repel their swords, and all of them fell to the ground. The chief was amazed by Zeke's defense and decided to test him again. The chief challenged Zeke to a one-on-one sparring fight that would end when either of them surrendered. The chief believed he would win and was excited to face Zeke. When Zeke's previous opponents heard about the upcoming fight, they requested that the chief avenge their defeat. They were still amazed by Zeke's flawless defense, considering he was just a fired adventurer. Chief Bolton was as strong as the knight captain, and so he declared the start of the fight, beckoning Zeke to come forward. The chief was much heavier than the Zeke-san. When the chief attacked him quickly, Zeke's parry was nearly broken, but he managed to deflect it. Suddenly, the chief made a second attack attempt, and Zeke looked worried because the chief was so strong. The chief threw his sword so hard that Zeke couldn't defend it. However, Zeke stood unfazed and blocked the chief's hardest attack with another parry. Zeke was merciless with his defense. The onlookers were amazed to see him deflect the chief's harshest attack, but the chief wasn't finished yet. "You can fight on equal footing with me," he said, and Zeke had already passed the chief's test. However, the chief's passion for fighting had already woken up, and he wanted Zeke to entertain him a little longer. The chief decided to give him a strike attack called 1,000 Lashes. The chief looked so confident that Zeke, despite his great parries and moves, would not be able to defend against it. 1,000 Lashes. The chief attacked Zeke with swords that flashed like petals whizzing through the air. Countless lashes came at him, but Zeke decided to stand rigid and take them all. The chief and the people standing there were shocked by Zeke's action, with some of them thinking that he had died since the chief had overdone it. But he wasn't hurt. Not even a single wound was on his body. The people watching were shocked and couldn't believe what had happened. One guy came up to Zeke and said he couldn't believe Zeke had taken all the strikes head on, just to protect the ball. Zeke replied in a funny way, saying he thought it was a good idea to protect the ball, which is why he did it. The chief was also amazed by his capacity and admitted that he had underestimated him earlier. The chief told him that he had passed the test with flying colors and said to himself that the other members of the Crimson Lotus Fang must be high level if they fired a guy with such ability. The chief asked Zeke about the 1,000 Lashes and said that if he were in Zeke's place, he couldn't stand such lashes without any wound. The chief called Zeke extraordinary and was curious to know how Zeke got such an astonishing level of defense. For Zeke, defense had always been his way of life, and he was confident in his ability. The chief and Zeke were having this conversation while drinking, and others were also there. When Zeke looked around, the chief wondered about it and asked Zeke if he was worried about something. Zeke replied that everyone looked exhausted for some reason. The chief then explained that from stupid demons to even humans, there had been attacks on the royal Astaroth for the Orb of Light. The city was being destroyed from all directions by these attacks. Zeke had already heard some knowledge about the Orb of Light and knew that it played an important role in sealing the Demon King. He just realized that the job was not an ordinary one, but rather an outrageous one. The chief expressed hope that Zeke's abilities would change the situation in the city and serve as a great encouragement to the whole squad. After saying this, the chief shook Zeke's hand to show admiration and to approve the beginning of the job. Zeke started to wonder who the person next to the chief was, but the chief seemed to have forgotten to introduce the man to Zeke and shared that this man would be his senpai starting tomorrow. However, the man was disappointed that the chief didn't notice him despite waiting there the whole time. Eventually, the chief introduced him to Zeke and asked him to show him the way. The man's name was Lambda, and he was eager to take Zeke under his wing. He asked Zeke about the rumor of him being a former adventurer and getting fired, but Zeke confidently explained that he was dismissed because his former teammates thought he lacked firepower. However, Lambda couldn't help but wonder about Zeke's expulsion from his previous team and said it was a pity. The chief called the team stupid for expelling Zeke. After understanding Zeke's strength from their duel, the chief decided to put him in the front line during the battles with monsters so that his teammates could fight without worrying about defense. The chief realized that the reason for Zeke's expulsion from Crimson Lotus Fang was his lack of firepower, and they had made a terrible mistake by expelling him. The chief then asked Zeke if he wanted to return to the team or not, but Zeke didn't want to talk about it. The chief told him to forget about it since he was now one of their guards. He also joked that he wouldn't forgive him if he died first. In the next scene, Zeke's former teammates were facing a difficult situation after he left. Strange monsters appeared, and they were so powerful that they were able to regenerate their cuts even after being attacked by the Crimson Lotus Fang. These monsters were so dangerous that even the arrow attacks by Crimson Lotus Fang were ineffective against them. Irene ran out of arrows, and the monsters were closing in on the team. Hannah used a fire magic spell to attack the monster and managed to protect Irene from the monster. She stated that since Zeke was absent, they could not perform well, and mentioned that Zeke helped draw the monster's attention so they could fight freely. Irene also pointed out that Zeke was actually protecting them. Hannah pointed out that Nihat made a stupid decision to kick out Zeke. However, Nihat yelled back at them, "He's only a big useless blockhead." The loud sound caused more monsters to appear, and they had no choice but to combine their firepower for a counterattack. After the battle, they returned to the guild. Based on the crowd's gossiping in the guild, it seemed like they had failed the quest. These gossiping and humiliations made Nihat feel more jealous and angry. "I know Nihat is stupid, but this time he really did the worst." Zeke had just started his new job as a gatekeeper, with Lambda as his senpai. As they stood at their post, Zeke noticed that not many people were coming to the city. This was because the city was known for being dangerous. Lambda asked Zeke if he had a difficult time getting to the city. Zeke explained that he had to fight off monster flocks. Zeke had arrived there on foot, which surprised Lambda. As they were having their conversation, they noticed a carriage approaching. Lambda suggested that they check it out together. They started to check, and Lambda showed Zeke how to check in the permit letter. To further ensure safety, Lambda decided to inspect the goods that the carriage carried, but nothing suspicious was found. After apologizing for the inconvenience, Lambda told the carriage guy to enter the city. Zeke then asked the guys if they were from the city, but Lambda told them to stop investigating them since the permit was real. There was a blood scent coming out of the carriage, which had been fully wiped off. Zeke had already sensed the blood. The carriage was full of merchants' corpses, and the blood was the merchants'. After this, the carriage guys decided to kill both Lambda and Zeke and put their corpses inside the carriage. Lambda decided to call a backup and left Zeke alone against the killer guys after he told them to hold on and defend the attack a little bit. The guys assumed that his senpai was Lambda, and as he left to call for backup, they looked down on Zeke, assuming he was a newcomer. The killers were furious and threatened to kill Zeke before their superior returned. However, things did not go as the killers had planned. Zeke defeated them, and when Lambda returned with backup, Zeke had already subdued the attackers. Lambda was impressed that he had done it on his own. The backup Lambda had brought was the chief and another officer. The chief commended Zeke on a job well done and instructed the other officer to take the killers into custody. The killers had partners, and Zeke warned them to never think about hiding information from him. Then one of the killers said he would rather kill himself than betray his friends. As the killer was trying to commit suicide, the chief attempted to stop him, but was unsuccessful. Zeke then used the Iron Target and casted a defensive spell to prevent the man from killing himself. Zeke's trick was effective. The chief then asked Lambda what he was doing and requested him to come. The chief didn't approve of Lambda's actions, which was to call for backup while leaving Zeke alone since he was a newcomer, and something bad could have happened to him. Lambda apologized for his actions. The chief advised Lambda to do his best, or else Zeke would surpass him. Lambda was irritated by the chief's speech, and he turned to Zeke and asked if seeing him being roasted was fun. However, Zeke replied, saying that calling for backup was a good idea and that Lambda did nothing wrong. Lambda didn't understand Zeke's words positively, and he thought that Zeke was looking down on him. The next morning, Lambda greeted Zeke, but Zeke didn't seem to have slept the whole night. There was a monster attempting to attack the city, but Zeke wasn't as sleepy as Lambda. In fact, he killed them by himself. However, Lambda didn't appreciate Zeke's brave actions, and he was jealous of him. Only thing left for that useless motherfucker is death. Lambda was displeased with Zeke for not calling for backup when he was attacked by the monsters. He firmly advised Zeke to collaborate with other community members, to stop looking down on them, and to be more cooperative. Lambda was responsible for the events taking place, and he needed everyone's help to make them successful. Although Lambda's advice sounded positive, his intentions were not entirely pure. He did not like Zeke and appeared to be jealous of him. After talking to Zeke, Lambda got busy preparing for the day's mission and began cleaning up the mess. He then asked Zeke if he could work the day shift since he had worked the night shift. Zeke seemed untired, even though he had just fought monsters a few hours ago. Lambda then asked him what would happen if he suddenly fainted because he had not rested. Lambda also asked him a random question without context. "Don't you hate this job?" which left Zeke confused about what he meant. Zeke replied that working for 1 week without rest was normal for him. He was used to it. However, instead of appreciating Zeke's strength and dedication, Lambda was disgusted by his passion for work. Zeke was enjoying his meal with the company of other soldiers, but the atmosphere in the room was gloomy, as most of the food was being delivered to the knights who were fighting hard to protect the city. Despite the soldiers' dissatisfaction at the lack of food, they were ready to offer their meals to their superiors since they were fighting with all their might, even risking their lives. Observing the soldiers, Zeke noticed how tired and down they looked. He decided to step outside of the room and saw some kids playing with their lanterns. Suddenly, a girl appeared out of nowhere and asked if he was Zeke. Zeke confirmed his identity. "Oh wow, she had a big chest. I mean a big heart." The camera angle is perfect too. She had heard about Zeke through rumors and was impressed by his bravery in dueling with Chief Boston. Sareta told Zeke that he was a powerful man since no one had ever dared to do that. The girl introduced herself as Sareta. Sareta then revealed that she would be his teammate. However, Sareta's outfit was revealing, and Zeke asked if it was her official attire. Sareta confirmed it, explaining that it allowed her to move with ease. Zeke then asked about her defense skills, and Sareta replied confidently that she was skilled and never took any damage from the enemy. Zeke seemed to believe her words and spoke to her respectfully. Despite being older than her, Sareta asked him to stop being so formal with her. While they were talking, some kids who were playing outside flew their lanterns and started to ask for help. Sareta quickly went to their aid and rescued their lanterns. Oh my! The mangaka invested a lot of budget in this panel, but I love it, especially the camera angle. The kids were grateful to Sareta for giving their lanterns back. However, the people around the area were surprised by Sareta's outfit and didn't support it since it wasn't suitable for the public eye. Despite this, Sareta's attire made her more agile, allowing her to swiftly come to the aid of people in need. Zeke then asked her why she joined the defense troop. Sareta's primary reason for joining the defense troop was to help the residents and protect the city and its people. Zeke was impressed by her reasons, and Sareta said that it was just the beginning of her big journey, even though she hadn't achieved many feats yet. Sareta warned Zeke to be careful around Lambda, as he was not friendly towards newcomers. She proved Lambda's hostility by mentioning that the chief had never thought highly of him. Zeke understood Sareta's point and said that he would keep it in mind. He was grateful to be surrounded by good people like Sareta. When they returned to the royal capital, Lambda started overloading Zeke with several orders. But Zeke remembered Sareta's warning about newcomer bullying and related it to Lambda's overimposition of work on him. Even though the situation was chaotic and Lambda was cruel to him, Zeke did not mind it, since he had gotten used to such messes for a long time. Chief Bolton then came and asked Zeke how things were going. Zeke said it was a blessing to work with them. The chief was proud of Zeke and his progress. Due to a lack of human resources and caution among people, there were many unrecognized bandits in the city. He also planned to collect some kind of tax from the people in the coming time for this reason. Zeke found it a tiring thing to hear about the chief's plan to collect tax. The chief told Zeke to inform him whenever he encountered an emergency. Then, he asked where Lambda was, and he wasn't around since the chief arrived there, but Lambda was off for a walk. The chief wasn't happy with Lambda's recent attitude towards his job. When a carriage arrived at the royal capital, Lambda checked on them. He then let them in after thanking them for their cooperation. Zeke watched Lambda's actions and said that it was rare to see him working hard. Lambda replied saying he was gifted. The people with the carriage didn't have a permit letter or confirmation from the cities they had passed by. Zeke asked Lambda about this, but instead of checking on the people with the carriage, Lambda started getting frustrated with Zeke. Zeke noticed Lambda's frustration from his facial expression. Lambda, while trying to hide his frustration and showing a happy face, explained to Zeke that it was okay to let them in without checking, as they had been coming there several times. Lambda told Zeke that it was a newcomer. He was not allowed to find fault in his methods, and that he would hold all the responsibility. This was strange to Zeke, since Lambda had never taken any responsibility after Zeke came to the position. Lambda then told Zeke to be on his night shift, and Zeke asked if he was going to come with him. But he already knew the answer could be no since he had never been with him in his night shift. Lambda then told Zeke that he shouldn't be saying so, as it makes Lambda was keeping slacking off, and Lambda tried to make himself in the eyes of Zeke, saying that he let Zeke alone because he wanted Zeke to become familiar with the job. Lambda asked Zeke to go and check a dark area, pointing with his finger to the spot. The place was so dark that Zeke tried to observe what was there before actually moving on it. Lambda spoke to him as if he was afraid, saying that it was okay to be scared since he was a wary person. However, things did not turn out as Zeke expected. When he entered the dark place, he saw a reflection and was slashed by a dagger, but he managed to block it. Suddenly, Zeke received a clear-cut wound on his back. The most surprising thing was that the stabber was Lambda himself. When Zeke realized this, he turned to Lambda with an angry face and asked him why he did it. Lambda wanted to kill him right there. Zeke then realized that the bandits entering the city were coming through Lambda. Lambda was the one causing chaos in the city. He let them enter the city in exchange for a portion of the stolen goods, which was the mutual benefit for both of them. Zeke couldn't believe what he was hearing and asked Lambda if he knew what he was doing. "Of course I do." Lambda started to explain that people in the city only complain when they are robbed, and at other times, they wander around the same place they were robbed, making it convenient to rob them. Lambda did not fulfill any of the missions he had taken from the chief, but was still reporting to him about them. Zeke called Lambda a nuisance for his bizarre actions. Although Zeke had just been stabbed, he walked on. Seeing this, Lambda was devastated and couldn't believe Zeke was able to walk. Zeke disrespected Lambda, saying that a person as wicked and dependent as Lambda could not do anything helpful at all. Zeke had previously put up with Lambda because of Lambda's superiority status, but now he realized that Lambda was not his real senpai but an enemy. Therefore, he decided to fight Lambda to protect the city. Lambda looked at Zeke in disgust. Zeke took his sword to fight and destroy Lambda mercilessly. Lambda foolishly underestimated Zeke's abilities and arrogantly belittled him despite his own arrogance. At that time, Lambda was secretly colluding with assassins who were experts in night combat. He ordered them to kill Zeke. One of the assassins ran towards Zeke, taking advantage of the darkness of the night, swiftly bouncing around the wall. But Zeke easily detected the stealthy movement and struck his head, cutting his leg, which made the assassin unable to move for a moment. The other assassin also attacked Zeke from behind, but Zeke fought back fiercely. Despite the assassins having the advantage, Zeke remained unfazed and bravely declared that their attacks would not be enough to kill him. As Zeke fought back, the assassins began to fear him. They had underestimated Zeke's power and quickly realized that he was much more dangerous than they had initially thought. The assassins blamed Lambda for tricking them so they ran away, cursing at him. Lambda was stunned when the assassins fled from Zeke's ruthless attacks. Despite Lambda's attempts to call them back, they were too frightened and ignored him. Zeke advised Lambda to take charge and stop relying on others. Lambda then knelt down and begged for mercy. He twisted the truth, claiming that the assassins had threatened him and convinced him to lure Zeke into an ambush. Lambda promised to do anything to earn Zeke's mercy, but Zeke demanded that he confess to all of his crimes, which only made Lambda angrier and yell, "What did you just say?" as he pulled out a sword, declaring that he was going to kill Zeke himself. However, Zeke easily knocked Lambda out with just his bare fists, also stating that a bastard like him does not deserve the honor of holding a sword and deserves to go to jail. After Lambda was apprehended, all the bandits in the city were also captured. Zeke's heroic actions earned him the gratitude of Chief Bolton. Sareta was thrilled to hear about Zeke's accomplishment, which resulted in his promotion to Division Commander. This was a significant achievement, since it usually took at least 3 years to reach this level. However, other soldiers were unhappy about Zeke's rapid promotion and questioned why Sareta was present during the announcement. The chief appointed Zeke as the leader of the 5th Division, but the other soldiers were not happy with this decision. They believed that Zeke wouldn't last long because they looked down on the 5th Division. However, Sareta, who was also a member of the 5th Division, was thrilled that Zeke was her new senpai. Unlike their former teammate Lambda, Sareta was genuinely committed to protecting the city. When Zeke asked where the other members were, he found out that they were not as devoted to their job as Sareta was. They usually slacked off, and even the chief knew about it. Despite their stubbornness and excessive self-indulgence, they were powerful. In fact, they were top-tier defense troops. But at the same time, they were freaks. The chief entrusted Zeke with the task of getting these stubborn soldiers to do their job, as he believed in Zeke's abilities. Zeke accepted the challenge, even though he knew it would be difficult. To start, Zeke and Sareta decided to go to the wine bar to find Spinoza, one of the members of the 5th Division. Spinoza was known for her excessive drinking and a lack of commitment to her job. She didn't care about being fired, but the city needed her as there were not enough exceptional defense troops like her. When they arrived at the wine bar, they found Spinoza lying on the table, drunk. Sareta showed Zeke where Spinoza was sitting, and they approached her. Spinoza, mistaking Sareta for someone in her dream, put her hands on Sareta's breasts to check if she was real. Sareta was confused by Spinoza's action, but Spinoza realized it was Sareta in real time by the softness of her breasts. Zeke then introduced himself as the division commander and tried to assign Spinoza a task. However, Spinoza refused to take orders from someone she believed was weaker than her. Zeke then challenged her to a physical competition, with the loser having to do their job every day. Spinoza accepted the challenge, desperate to prove her strength. She said she could only follow Zeke's orders if he was capable of commanding her after the challenge. Spinoza challenged Zeke to an arm wrestling match. She placed her hands on the table first and invited him to join. Zeke believed arm wrestling was too easy and beneath him. Spinoza laughed and suggested a bigger fight, but worried Zeke might hurt himself. She was confident in her fighting skills. Zeke asked Sareta about Spinoza's arm wrestling skills. Sareta said Spinoza was excellent and could handle legions of enemies. Zeke and Spinoza began to wrestle, with Sareta acting as the arbitrator. Spinoza boasted she could win with a single strike, while Zeke was more focused on the match. However, Zeke was winning, and he asked if Spinoza had been drinking. Spinoza said she had only used 20% of her power and would eventually win. Sareta supported Zeke, saying he was a worthy opponent. Spinoza tried using 50% of her power, but Zeke's arm didn't budge. He warned her to be careful, or she would break her arm. Spinoza then used 60%, but still, nothing happened. She became angry because she couldn't win easily. Finally, Spinoza admitted that Zeke was good since he made her use so much of her power, but she still believed he couldn't win. She used her maximum energy to push his arm down, but Zeke remained unfazed. Spinoza couldn't believe Zeke was still fighting. The table had turned, but Zeke was still undefeated. He had been calm throughout the match, and Spinoza admired his composure. Zeke joked that he was calm because the match was a piece of cake. He hadn't used his maximum energy yet, and it was his turn to strike back. Spinoza got angry because of his arrogance, and Zeke won the match. Spinoza was shocked because she had never lost an arm wrestling match before. She had always claimed victory with little effort, but Zeke was different. Sareta declared Zeke the winner, and Spinoza admitted he was tough and had stood no chance against him. Zeke then lifted her giant mace and threw it towards Spinoza, saying that she would do the work as promised before their arm wrestling match. The mace hit Spinoza, causing her to fall to the ground. She got angry and couldn't believe that Zeke could lift and throw her giant mace as if it weighed nothing. While on the ground, she shouted loudly, admitting her defeat. Spinoza wanted to have a rematch at another time and asked Zeke if he was down for it. Zeke welcomed the challenge. Spinoza then asked Zeke to take a nap, as she would be exhausted if she didn't rest in the afternoon. Zeke was firm in his response and told her that he wouldn't accept any excuses and that she needed to adapt to the work schedule starting from the next day. Spinoza accepted his order. There was still one more person left to find, who seemed difficult to locate as she was unpredictable. When she in the city heard that Zeke had successfully forced Spinoza to work, she was amazed and called him an intriguing man. I sense 5th Division will be a harem division, or should I say a waifu division. Sareta stated that there is one more member of their team named Fam. Fam was an archer and had the skill to read the wind direction. As Sareta was explaining Fam's abilities to Zeke, he asked Sareta if Fam enjoyed spying on others. While they were talking, an arrow was shot at Zeke from above, but he was quick enough to catch it. When he turned to face the direction from where the arrow came, he saw a girl with a bow and arrow. He asked if she was Fam. She confirmed that she was indeed Fam. Sareta was surprised to see her. Fam then asked how he detected her since she was hiding herself. Zeke was able to find Fam's location due to her spy cat. Although Fam told the cat not to reveal her location, Zeke was still able to find her. Thanks to the cat, Zeke was able to locate Fam. Fam had already heard about Zeke's recruitment test and how successful he was, but she didn't expect a newcomer like him to become a division commander so quickly. After hearing Fam's compliment, Zeke asked her to work with him, but she refused. Fam said that she couldn't afford to waste her time working with other humans. Fam asked Zeke what her return would be for dedicating her time to him, but he didn't answer. Fam told Zeke that she would wait until he found an answer and keep watching him from the shadows. She then left. Spinoza was annoyed by Fam, and Zeke didn't understand why all of them wanted to test their superiority. Meanwhile, Spinoza was struggling to adjust to the work schedule. She used to take afternoon naps, but couldn't anymore. She also hadn't had a drink in a while. Spinoza was bored of patrolling and said it would have been better to arrest all the suspects and give them a beating rather than patrolling. But Zeke replied saying that this wasn't really a good idea because she might end up arresting innocent people. Sareta told Spinoza that it was great to work with her. Spinoza was excited to hear this from Sareta, but didn't interpret it well. She thought Sareta was interested in her romantically, so she started to squeeze Sareta's breasts. Sareta told her to stop, but Spinoza refused. Zeke was there and told Spinoza to stop since it was harassment, even though they were both females. Spinoza still refused. Zeke warned her that he wouldn't tolerate her behavior and was about to take action. Zeke used Iron Target. Spinoza was pulled toward him and grabbed his chest. Zeke pushed her back, causing Spinoza to fall to the ground. Zeke told her that it was a punishment for her actions. Spinoza was like, "Oh wow, this is a fine too. Thanks for the meal." Suddenly, an arrow was shot, and Zeke caught it before it nearly hit Sareta. Sareta thanked Zeke for saving her. The arrow was from Fam, who was standing above them in a building. Fam usually shot arrows to get attention from her target interests and wanted to make them think about her all the time. Sareta and Zeke thought that Fam had an interest in them since they had been targets of her arrows before, but Spinoza thought she was ignored because she hadn't been a target. Zeke asked Fam if someone had already told her to stop, but nobody had ever told her to stop shooting arrows randomly. Zeke suggested that they work together rather than her shooting her target interest with an arrow. Fam was not good at communication, which is why she didn't collaborate with anyone. Zeke explained that shooting people with an arrow would not get her very far and asked if she was good at other tasks. Fam then walked away, bidding farewell to Zeke. Spinoza suggested a face-to-face fight with Fam to force her to start working for him, but Zeke hoped that she would stop firing arrows at allies soon. Fam had been distracting them from their work by firing arrows. She would show up whenever they were doing things and distract them by throwing arrows until the end of the day. When the sun set and night fell, Spinoza said it was time to drink. Sareta was worried about Zeke as he had worked so hard all day. Zeke assured her that everything was fine. He then warned Spinoza not to drink too much and promised to check on her the next day if she did. Zeke told Sareta to take some rest. Zeke had entered his room and gone to sleep. However, Fam managed to sneak into his room unnoticed. Zeke was already aware of her presence, so he did not fall asleep. Fam noticed that Zeke had blocked all of her arrows and expressed her surprise. Zeke replied that he was impressed by Fam's stealthy and cautious approach to firing arrows. Fam wondered why he had bothered to block all of her arrows when they were no match for his toughness. She questioned whether it was a matter of pride. Zeke replied that it was his instinct to do so, and he also thought that if he ignored the arrows, he might miss the opportunity for a match. After their conversation, Fam was interested in Zeke, which is why she decided to dedicate her time to him. She moved to his bed and slept next to him, saying that she would mess with him until she fully understood him. Zeke was confused and asked her what she was doing. She replied that she was showing him her sincerity. Despite being an archer, Fam was physically attracted to Zeke and was so close to him that he had to ask her to move away. Fam replied saying that she wasn't good at estimating distance. Zeke then asked Fam if she would start working the next day, and she replied, yes. I like the main character. He just keeps giving off the I don't get paid enough for this shit vibe every time. The next day, all 4 members of the troupe gathered together to discuss their work. When others saw them all gathered, they couldn't believe their eyes since it had never happened before, and none of the members had never obeyed their superiors' orders. They admired Zeke for bringing them together and getting everyone to work together. As the group was discussing, Spinoza complained of a headache. Zeke then asked her if she had been drinking excessively for the past 2 days, as Spinoza had a drinking problem. Despite Zeke's advice to limit her drinking, Spinoza struggled to control her addiction. She promised Zeke that she would be more careful from then on. Meanwhile, the people outside were afraid that Spinoza might attack them, as many former division commanders had fallen victim to her, and they feared Zeke could be next. Fam was excited to test Zeke's skill with a form of physical contact called skinship. Zeke warned Fam that this skinship could kill people, but Fam claimed it was only intended for Zeke and not meant to harm anyone else. Zeke worried that Fam's actions resembled an assassination attempt, and the onlookers were terrified of what she might do to Zeke, who remained stoic. The chief arrived and was pleased to see everyone together, but he had bad news to share. The sorrowful undead legions were preparing to attack that night. Everyone was shocked and frightened by the announcement. The legions had advanced a year ago but retreated to regroup and gather their forces in pursuit of the light orb. The chief explained that they had fought hard and lost many soldiers in their previous encounter with the legions, who turned the fallen soldiers into undead soldiers. The regular troops were frightened and asked Chief Bolton if the knights could help them, but the knights were tasked with protecting the royal and noble families, so the only option was to build a wall to stop the monsters. The troops were feeling dejected as they realized they were not invincible. The chief informed them that the most perilous task was to defend the front gate. Zeke then bravely offered to take on this task along with his team. The other troops were filled with fear and negativity, believing they had no chance against the monstrous invaders. As the sun set and night descended, the monsters began their advance towards the royal Astaroth. Their leader was restless, as his sole objective was to free the Demon King from the grasp of the Light Orb, which was located in the city. They were willing to do anything to claim the Light Orb, and the leader's ultimate goal was to become the Demon King's right hand while annihilating other humans. When the time for the attack came, he raised the undead legions and ordered them to lay siege to the city, in order to establish the Demon King's reign once again. The legions were too numerous. The leader ordered them to move to Astaroth and destroy it. The royal and nobles area, which was the second outer wall, was ruled by Captain Gregor and his knights. The undead legions were led by Grand Warlock Lich, who was once a benevolent warlock but was corrupted by his desire for power and immortality. The main gate was only guarded by Zeke and his 3 special troops, which confused the Captain Gregor. The undead legions charged towards the main gate, and the battle began. The legions were powerful and determined, and they fought with all they had. However, they were most potent at night, so Zeke and his team had a chance to win if they could hold out until morning. The chief counted on Zeke and urged him to remain cautious. He believed that quality mattered more than quantity. The undead legions arrived at the main gate, and the battle erupted. Zeke's team fought bravely, ripping apart and killing the legions one by one. They fought in perfect collaboration, with Zeke diverting the legions' attention while blocking their attacks and Spinoza smashing off their heads with her giant mace. Many people underestimated Zeke's potential because his defense was unique, but he was a great warrior. The monsters crumbled under his might. Sareta saw Zeke in the middle of the fight and thought he was cool and strong. The undead legions were well versed in offense, and Sareta understood that taking too much blows from the enemy could be fatal, but she was feeling like defenseless, and since her equipment was only for swift and powerful strikes for this reason, it's correct to say that Zeke was putting his life on the line. But Zeke was successful, as he was able to maintain the situation almost alone for himself. Zeke was strong and became an unmovable shield for other members to take offense against the enemy. Sareta, after watching Zeke's sacrifice, decided to do her best and fight with all she had. Zeke took all the damage for himself, showcasing his superpower. Fam knew that Zeke was the kind of person who used his power to protect others. Fam then began to shoot some arrows, stating that she was the only one allowed to tease Zeke. The arrow Fam threw was aimed at Zeke's opponent in front of him, not touching him. Zeke intercepted the enemies and observed the allies at the same time. Somebody asked Zeke if he was okay, and he confirmed that he was. Fam was interested in Zeke and said she wanted to know him better. Chief Bolton asked Fam her opinion about Zeke, and she replied that Zeke was a reliable guy. The chief was surprised at Zeke, as he joined them not long ago, and the 5th Division became disciplined after he arrived there. Even though the staff members of the 5th Division were self-indulgent and mischievous, the chief had faith in Zeke that he could change them. Zeke did not let him down, and he made the staff members become much more disciplined than they had ever been. Zeke showed a very high level of defense skill, and all of them were confident in his ability and relied on him, which then helped Zeke with freedom. Zeke was happy with his teammates and thought that he had the best allies. All of them were desperate and passionate to protect the city until their last breath. Captain Gregor did not care about the city or the dead citizens at all, and if it meant saving the Queen and the Light Orb, he would sacrifice the whole city and all the people in it. But things did not go as planned. The Undead Legion did not storm the city due to the 5th Division's interception. He could not believe what he heard. Since there were only 4 people defending the main gate, he thought the Undead Legion would storm easily, but they did not. The Warlock was shocked when he heard what happened. He thought the 1st Legion was enough, and that he had to do something, so the 2nd Legion would not face the same fate. The legions were constantly crushed, and even with their ability to reanimate, they weren't able to stand the powerful and fearful attack by the gatekeepers. And Zeke, with his spectacular ability, was the fuel of this attack. Zeke and his team were pushing the undead soldiers towards the cliff. Once the legions fell into the river, they became useless. The Warlock thought that reducing Zeke's teammates' combat strength by half could help the legions advance. However, he soon realized that even though the undead soldiers were drawn to Zeke, they couldn't attack him. Zeke had already taken numerous strikes, but he appeared unfazed by them. The Warlock knew that his legions wouldn't last long unless Zeke was wounded, which worried him greatly. He was afraid that he would fail to crush Zeke and his team and take the Light Orb he desired so much. The Warlock became frustrated and angry. He was determined to take the Light Orb and wouldn't give up until he succeeded. He decided to launch an all-out attack and urged the fallen legions to merge their bones together to form a gargantuan undead. The gargantuan undead smashed the ground attempting to destroy Zeke. When Captain Gregor of the Knight's Army saw the giant legion through his monocular, standing far from the outer gate, he was terrified. He began to worry that the legion would advance to the second outer wall, so he ordered the knights to fortify the magic to keep their inner wall safe. Meanwhile, the guards behind Zeke were terrified and had lost hope as they thought that giant legion was strong enough to break through Zeke and destroy them all. When the smoke cleared, the legion attempted to destroy Zeke with its terrifying blow, but Zeke managed to block it. Spinoza and Sarah were surprised that Zeke could block such a terrifying blow from a monster 10 times his size. The warlock was present, watching the fight not too far away. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Zeke blocking the blow, and he became angry as he thought that Zeke's defensive power would be an obstacle for the Demon King. He realized that Zeke had to disappear immediately for his purpose to be achieved, unless it would be impossible. He told them not to rejoice as the giant legion had not finished its attack. The giant legion attacked Zeke with its second blow, but Zeke managed to block it again. The other soldiers were worried, and even one of them covered his eyes so as not to watch the fight. They thought that Zeke had no chance, and that he would be reduced to dust soon, despite his absurd defensive power. The chief told them to stop spitting nonsense on Zeke's efforts. However, the chief realized that no matter how long Zeke could withstand the monster, he couldn't win, so he decided to do something about it. Zeke tried to deflect the blow from the gargantuan undead, but his foot slowly sank into the ground. Unfazed by the blow, Zeke stated that unpredictable attack patterns wouldn't work on him. He deflected the blow, sending the gargantuan undead falling backward. When they saw they had won, everyone was happy and excited. The warlock, when he saw the gargantuan undead falling, got angry and said that Zeke stood in his way. The warlock's final hope was the resurrection of the Demon King. He thought that after the Demon King was resurrected, he would increase in power, and he could become perfect. Zeke threw his sword towards the warlock, piercing his face. Despite calling on the Demon King, he received no response. Zeke declared himself the protector of the city and vowed not to let any invaders pass. The warlock retorted that Zeke had caused him to lose everything. If it weren't for Zeke, the warlock would have obtained the light orb. His body began to disintegrate, slowly disappearing, as did the gargantuan undead. They declared their victory, and everybody started to yell out of excitement and happiness. The soldiers who had initially doubted Zeke's abilities and looked down on him because of his status as a common adventurer witnessed his absurd defensive power and asked for his apology. The chief was also excited about the victory, but when he saw the inner wall, he got mad. The captain praised Zeke for his great work in helping the city, especially during the final battle against the monster. Zeke then tried to compliment everyone else. Spinoza insisted that he was the one deserving of thanks, and he had essentially fought the war single-handedly. The chief found it amusing to hear such praise from Spinoza, known for her toughness and reluctance to compliment others, leading him to wonder if Spinoza had developed feelings for Zeke. Sareta also thanked Zeke, saying that they couldn't have fought without him. However, Zeke didn't seem to accept the compliment and dismissed it as flattery. Fam suddenly appeared and teased Zeke for not taking compliments seriously and never receiving them often. She then complimented Zeke, calling him powerful and cool. Although embarrassed, Zeke thanked her and asked her to stop teasing him. As they continued talking and laughing, Captain Gregor asked them where the gargantuan undead he saw with his monocular was. Chief Bolton expected Captain Gregor to apologize for abandoning the outer wall during a battle, leaving them vulnerable to the enemy. However, Gregor refused to apologize, stating that defending the outer wall was their duty, while his focus was on protecting the palace, the royal family, the nobility, and the light orb. This refusal angered Chief Bolton, who criticized Gregor for prioritizing the inner wall's defense over the safety of the city and its people. Captain Gregor asked Chief Bolton about the whereabouts of the undead legions and the giant monstrosity. Chief Bolton pointed out that it was Zeke who had defeated the monsters. Captain Gregor turned to Zeke and inquired about his name and the weapons he used to defeat the monster. Zeke introduced himself and, in response to the second question, said, "I and everybody." The captain was confused with Zeke's answer. He confirmed the death of the undead legions and told Zeke that he would keep an eye on him. However, the people of the city didn't like Captain Gregor, and they whispered disparaging comments about him. Before it was Lambda, now it's Captain Gregor. Assholes. Assholes everywhere. All of them, including the chief, started celebrating their victory. They entered the bar. Everyone was excited and happy drinking alcohol. Many people came up to Zeke and his teammates to express their gratitude for saving the city. The bar owners also praised them for their work and offered them anything they wanted in the bar. Having heard this, Spinoza picked out the finest wine in the bar. Sareta told Zeke that many people were coming in to show their gratitude for saving the city. Zeke noticed how overwhelmed Sareta was by people's gratitude and felt embarrassed for receiving so much thanks. He expressed his appreciation for her and said that she fought alongside him, and without her, he would have not been able to do anything. Zeke then turned to his other teammates and told them that he would not have achieved anything alone. They had helped him with their offensive power, since he had specialized in defense. He felt so confident because they were all there. They all started thanking him, but Sareta began bursting into tears. Sareta had always thought that she could not do anything, but now that Zeke complimented her, she felt delighted. A voice came from the bottom, and Zeke noticed this when she spoke. Fam lay down on the ground under the table, saying that she was a shy girl and preferred to stay in the secret place. Zeke said to Fam that this wasn't something a shy girl would do and pull her out from it. As she had a perception that all adventurers were selfish and egotistical, Fam was so surprised that Zeke, despite being a former adventurer, had achieved such incredible feats. Zeke was surprised that Fam knew he was a former adventurer. Zeke asked Fam what reward she wanted. Even though he couldn't afford expensive things, he was willing to give her what he could afford. Zeke then said that as the division commander, this was something he was supposed to do. Fam then asked Zeke to pat her head and compliment her as a reward. Zeke agreed, put his hands on Fam's head, and complimented her, saying, "Thank you for supporting us with your helpful marksmanship." Fam was happy to receive a compliment from someone she admired the most. Spinoza challenged Zeke to a drinking contest. She wanted redemption for her arm wrestling contest loss and said that she wasn't going to lose this time. Zeke accepted the challenge and invited Sareta and Fam. But neither Sareta nor Fam drank wine, and they weren't as good at drinking as Spinoza and Zeke, so they refused the challenge. Many people in the bar joined the drinking contest and started drinking with Zeke and Spinoza. The wine was so strong that some of the drinkers' throats burned from the very beginning of the contest. Spinoza was surprised at how much Zeke could drink. One of the people drinking there told them to stop as he couldn't win, but Zeke didn't stop. Spinoza said to Zeke that he was her only worthy opponent. Spinoza didn't seem okay as her face was turning red, and Zeke asked her if she was okay. But Spinoza wasn't ready to surrender and called the barmaster to order more wine. Sareta then came to Zeke and hugged him while he was sitting and drinking. She was so romantically appealing, grabbed his head, and put it to her heart. Zeke was confused and didn't know what to do about it. He tried to wake her up as she looked sleepy and told her not to let her guard down no matter what. But Sareta wasn't in her right sense and kept bothering him. Sareta could have mistaken wine for water and drank without knowing, so Zeke thought she might throw up soon. He asked Fam to take care of Sareta, but unfortunately, Fam had already fallen to the ground. Zeke couldn't believe that Fam was also sleeping. He then put Sareta next to where Fam was sleeping on the floor. Spinoza didn't seem tired and asked him to continue their drinking contest. Spinoza said that even though Zeke was good, she wasn't going to lose the contest. Zeke said that he really enjoyed drinking at big parties like that and told her that she was quite good at drinking. Spinoza, however, was unable to continue and fell down on the table sleeping. Only Zeke was still awake, and everyone else had fallen asleep exhausted from drinking. Now Fumi has a new friend to drink with. The once successful and famous party lost all its reputation after Zeke left. Guild members mocked the party, and as a result, no strong individuals were interested in joining. Those who wanted to join were weaklings. The party faced failure after failure, further tarnishing its reputation. Nihat was angry and frustrated, but couldn't improve the situation. Hana was arguing with Nihat, saying that he should be ashamed of fleeing away as opposed to struggling till the end as a leader of the party. Nihat blamed her for lacking strong magic during their fight with the monsters. In turn, she blamed him for not staying long enough, causing her insecurity while chanting. Irene explained that frontline members partly contributed to the insecurity of back members. Nihat was frustrated and angry with her. Nihat thought that this had never happened before, and he could feel that they were hampered. He thought that they were inherently weak and slow, and they were strong, but now he thinks about it. Were the monster affected by something else, or could it be? Which Nihat thought about Zeke. While sitting and drinking, other adventurers discussed rumors about Zeke being promoted to division commander and defeating the undead legion with his allies. They praised him and wished he could join their party. However, when Nihat overheard them discussing Zeke, he became angry and told them to stop spreading nonsense. The people talking provoked Nihat by reminding him that he was the one who expelled Zeke. Out of control, Nihat approached the guy and headbutted him. The other guy became angry at Nihat's action and asserted that Nihat couldn't do whatever he wanted just because he was an adventurer. Despite the confrontation, Nihat remained emotional and punched the guy in the face, insulting him as a piece of trash. Even with Hana and Irene present, urging him to stop being violent, Nihat disregarded their pleas and continued his aggressive behavior. Nihat ended up laying on the ground exhausted. As he lay there, Hana and Irene told him not to push himself too hard just to prove something to others. They suggested that the party should start from scratch. However, Nihat didn't listen and even told them to shut up. He was angry at the people who made fun of him and was swearing at them. He got up from the ground and left the party without a word, despite the girl's questions about where he was going. Approaching the receptionist girl, Nihat demanded an A-ranked mission in a rigid and furious manner. Despite Hana's attempt to dissuade him, the receptionist's response left Nihat speechless. She informed them that the party was only eligible for D-ranked missions, 2 ranks lower than before. The girl explained to Nihat that the party went down 2 ranks because they didn't have any additional members recently and also had a very low rate of successful missions. However, Nihat wasn't convinced yet. He took the paper without her permission and read it himself while she tried to retrieve it. Nihat then read a mission involving a red ogre and declared that he would undertake it. But Nihat's decision was not the correct one because by that time, the red ogre was much more powerful than them. Even his own teammate was begging him not to accept the mission since it was beyond their capacity and could possibly cost their lives. "No, this can't be the end," said Nihat to himself. The fact that the party became D-ranked and that all this occurred because Zeke was expelled made him even angrier. Spinoza told Zeke that she would love to have some more sleep, even though Zeke was serious about time and told her not to be late too many times. Spinoza couldn't help it. She drank too much wine at night. He was mad at her bizarre passiveness that came because of drinking too much wine. The day's mission was to escort and protect the execution grounds. Zeke ordered Sareta and Fam banned from escorting. However, when Zeke entered the prison, things weren't as he expected. Sareta was stuck handcuffed in one of the prison cells, and the prisoners were not there. Zeke found a key and freed her. The chief suspected that Gazelle was behind this. While Spinoza was taking the blame for not waking up early and not helping Sareta, Fam wasn't there. And Zeke asked Sareta where Fam was. Fam was chasing the bandits downstairs. Fortunately, there was no way out downstairs, so they couldn't escape. The chief realized that the bandits didn't intend to escape, so he knew he needed to do something about it. The man responsible for the escape of the prisoners was not a stranger to them. He was, in fact, Zeke's former asshole Lambda. Even after being imprisoned for being a traitor, Lambda didn't change his mindset. He still aimed to take down Zeke, and punish him for his imprisonment. Lambda unlocked each cell and helped the prisoners escape. Although some inmates were hesitant and unsure about leaving their cell, Lambda encouraged them to escape and celebrate their newfound freedom. Pham told Zeke that Lambda was the one who released the prisoners. The chief had already expected it to be Lambda, and Pham had just proved it to him. Zeke ordered Spinoza to call for backup quickly. Spinoza wanted to beat them up on her own, but Zeke didn't accept her idea. He insisted on having a backup force to overwhelm them so no prisoner could elude capture. She threw her mace to him so he could use it and fight the enemy with it. This is when a whole bunch of prisoners started rioting. A crowd of prisoners led by Lambda approached Zeke. Lambda reached out to Zeke first and expressed his desire for revenge due to the humiliation of being thrown into prison. Zeke turned to Lambda, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Despite spending all this time in jail, Lambda remained unchanged. Lambda gave a signal to the whole crowd of prisoners who were rioting to go and attack Zeke. Despite the onslaught, Zeke, with his incredible defensive power, remained unfazed. The chief intervened and aided Zeke by attacking the prisoners with his powerful 1,000 rush technique, helping to defeat most of them. While observing Lambda's relentless desire for confrontation, Zeke wondered why he sought his own demise even though his sentence was soon to end. Meanwhile, the chief contemplated showing mercy to Lambda. Using the weapon that Spinoza had given him, Zeke displayed his prowess, and the sight of it instilled fear in the prisoners. In fear, they pleaded for forgiveness, claiming they had no intention of escaping, and asked if they could return to the prison. Suddenly, a beautiful and attractive woman appeared out of the blue, revealing herself as Gazelle, the leader of the bandit gang and a notorious criminal. Gazelle used a skill to paralyze Zeke's body. Sareta warned Zeke not to look into Gazelle's eyes. Trapped and paralyzed, Zeke was defenseless as Gazelle threw her sword towards him. However, Sareta intervened just in time, saving his life. She admitted her previous carelessness but promised it wouldn't happen again. Pham stepped forward, wielding a knife, warning Gazelle not to take another step. Gazelle questioned what Pham would do if she refused. Pham attempted to distract Gazelle. Spinoza suddenly appeared and violently attacked Gazelle, knocking her down. The team worked together seamlessly, impressing the chief, who thought to himself, already a perfect team. Spinoza attempted to justify the attack as a form of redemption for being late, but Zeke disagreed and refused to accept the explanation, even as Spinoza begged for understanding. The chief ordered Lambda and the other prisoners to return to their cells, but Lambda was unable to do anything. In response, the chief decided to execute Gazelle in public and ordered his soldiers to escort her to the execution ground. The Gazelle bandit gang had a serious criminal record, having killed several guards a year ago when the undead legions attacked. They wreaked havoc on the entire city, so the chief decided to execute the leader in order to prevent any further attacks on the city. Gazelle had been continuously pillaging the city, committing crimes such as killing, arson, and human trafficking. She even declared war on the Knights with the light orb as her target, but was ultimately unsuccessful. Captain Gregor of the Knights was angry with the chief for his failure to prevent the bandits from entering the city through the outer gate, which caused a strain in the relationship between the city and the Knights. The chief tried to explain to Gregor the cost and difficulty of keeping the outer gate guarded, but the relationship remained sour. Afterwards, they tried many ways to deal with the bandits, but they kept failing. The captain had really struggled a lot to destroy the bandits and protect the city from their attacks, but he couldn't do it. After hearing what the bandits had done, Sareta said it was depressing to hear that there weren't many soldiers left back then, while Spinoza told her to escort Gazelle quickly. During that time, the Frost Princess, who was irritated by the bandits, took care of them and significantly diminished their power. The Frost Princess was a vice captain of the Knights, and she was pretty and calm. The chief told Zeke to be careful if he happened to meet her. The chief then said, "Let's clean this mess." He didn't want Zeke to do anything at the time. The chief wanted to get rid of everything about the bandits and wanted to finish them all that day. So, the chief needs Zeke's strength at the moment. The bandit leader remained calm even as her execution approached. When Zeke asked her about her composure, she explained that his intention to execute her wouldn't change anything. She pointed out that her entire gang was present, blending in with the crowd, and questioned how Zeke could prevent them from causing chaos. Zeke confidently responded that he was adept at handling such situations. However, she laughed at him, expressing her confidence that her gang would rescue her. Giving a signal to her gang, they began their attack, inciting chaos among the people. In response, Zeke remarked that if the entire Gazelle gang was present, their days were doomed. Sareta, Spinoza, and Fam had already begun attacking Gazelle's gang, urging Zeke to leave it to them. Together, they managed to subdue the gang members, forcing them to surrender. The people around were shocked by the sudden turn of events. Gazelle's leader became furious when she realized her gang couldn't assist her. Despite this setback, she remained determined, thinking that as long as she could survive, she could rebuild her gang again. Attempting to escape from Zeke's grasp, she warned her to stop resisting. Zeke then asked her if she was prepared to face a painful death. Zeke instructed Gazelle to plead for mercy and cry, as this would be the last moments for her and her underlings. Zeke used Gazelle as bait to lure the remaining bandits, and he succeeded in doing so without causing any damage. The people were pleased that Zeke was able to put an end to the bandits, and they expressed their trust in him to protect Astaroth in the future. The captain thanked Zeke for his efforts, as everyone was protected because of it. Zeke was preoccupied at what he had just done, and almost forgot about his previous party. He wondered if Nihat's party was still doing well. Haha, now Nihat is asshat. Sareta was happy and grateful for the day as she woke up. She looked so pleasant, but Zeke couldn't help but worry about Spinoza and Fam. These two were giving him a hard time with their lack of discipline and obedience. Recently, he had been working so hard because he was so easy on two of them. When Spinoza went out for patrolling with Sareta, she was so lazy and asked Sareta to go drinking instead of working their task. Sareta agreed to Spinoza, saying that even taking a break once in a while was good though. Spinoza was thrilled that Sareta agreed and thanked her for being the only one who thinks for her. But things took a turn for the worse when Zeke found Spinoza drunk at the bar. He knew he had to report her laziness to the chief, but to his surprise, the chief redirected it back to him and told him to fix her. It felt like a slap in the face, but Zeke knew he had to do something. The same thing happened when Sareta went on patrol with Fam. After they went out to patrol, Fam asked Sareta to do the patrolling alone, as she had a critical business to take care of. Sareta agreed to let her go, even though it was a difficult task to do alone. When Zeke asked why Fam left, he realized that her motive was to follow him. Sareta was a kind and nurturing person, which unfortunately led her co-workers Fam and Spinoza to become lazy. Zeke, on the other hand, was also kind, but he understood the importance of being serious and enforcing regulations to ensure everyone did their job properly. Zeke wanted to evaluate Sareta's leadership skills at work, so he decided to put her to the test. He pretended to be a lazy guard and asked her how she would motivate him to work. Sareta responded with kindness and said that she would do her best to help him out. She then asked if he had completed his patrol duty. Zeke, being a bit difficult, said that it was good to take breaks sometimes. Sareta agreed but gently reminded him that he had a duty to protect the entire city. Zeke, still being a bit troublesome, then asked Sareta if she believed her approach would work on their other colleagues, Fam and Spinoza. He wasn't entirely satisfied with her response and felt a bit frustrated with her benevolence. He thought she was treating him like a child. Zeke asked Spinoza if she was doing the patrol properly. Fam told him that Spinoza went out drinking despite the prohibition. Spinoza didn't even go on patrol. Instead, she fled to the casino and lost all her money there. Spinoza was angry with Fam for exposing her to Zeke and threw a fist at Fam. Fam laughed at Spinoza and told her that her fist had become useless. Sareta, who witnessed the argument between Fam and Spinoza, said to Zeke that the two have opposite personalities. Zeke was worried that they wouldn't be able to complete the patrol mission at the rate they were doing it. While the knights were traveling, a kid stood in their way as he was searching for something on the ground. The leader among the knights got angry with the kid and started to talk to him aggressively. The kid started to apologize, but the knight was so ruthless that he kicked the kid with his big boots. Zeke, who was watching this, came up to the knight and tried to interfere. Zeke told the knight that he was a guardian and he wouldn't stand by and watch him hurt people. The knight got even angrier because Zeke talked to him that way and decided to kill him. The knight was offended by Zeke, even though Zeke hadn't done anything wrong. As the knight was running towards Zeke fiercely, a woman holding a sword got in the middle and stopped both of them from hitting each other. Surprisingly enough, the woman was Vice Captain Eleanor. Zeke realized that she was the Frost Princess that the chief had told him about. Eleanor asked the knight what she hated the most. The knight replied, saying a dirty room, but it was ranked number 7 on Eleanor's hate list. She told him that what she hated the most were those who dared to claim superiority over others and raised their voices to others. The knight then explained to her that he wasn't showing superiority, rather he was trying to teach the rude boy. The boy then tried to defend the knight, saying that the knight was trying to help him by kicking the ball, which rolled right into the path of the knights. Even though the boy tried to defend the knight was still mad at the boy and said that as soon as the guardian dared to point a sword at the knights, the boy and the guardian were accomplices. The knight explained to the vice captain that since the guardians pointed their swords at the knights, they were traitors, and traitors should be punished. Eleanor replied, approving the knight's claim that traitors should not be forgiven. The knight became so excited when he heard this and laughed at Zeke, saying that he was going to die today. But Eleanor pointed her sword towards the knight. The knight was scared when he saw this and asked her why. Eleanor believed that a knight must have noble hearts that are more than everyone else's. But this knight dared to use violence, and for this reason, the vice captain decided to punish him. The knight was trying to avoid the punishment by saying that he was a member of the Knight Order. He didn't deserve punishment. After punishing the knight, she went to the boy and asked if the knight had hit him. The boy confirmed that the knight had hit him. She then apologized to the boy, taking responsibility for not managing her subordinates properly. The kid seemed to be fine after the conversation. Zeke was impressed by her conduct and realized that she stood out from all the other knights. Eleanor turned to Zeke and his teammates and mentioned that she had heard about the 5th Division defeating the undead. She also explained that at that time, she was on an expedition and couldn't help them. She then expressed her desire to test Zeke's abilities in combat. Pham asked if she meant fighting, to which she replied yes and apologized for her behavior a moment before. Zeke was confused by her sudden change of heart. He was apprehensive about accepting her challenge, as the outcome would be visible to all if either of them lost. Eleanor was not afraid and asked Zeke if he was scared of losing or had no interest in expressing himself. Zeke wasn't afraid, but he was concerned for her well-being. Eleanor was known to be incredibly strong, having attained the position of vice captain at a young age. Some even believed that she was stronger than the commander himself. Due to this reputation, the knights thought that Zeke had no chance of winning the fight. However, Zeke was humble and grateful for the opportunity to fight with someone of her caliber. Eleanor began the fight by launching an attack at Zeke with her sword. Zeke was able to defend her attack, but he was awestruck by the beauty of her swordsmanship. He felt that he could handle her attacks if she kept coming at him in the same way. Despite Eleanor's best efforts to break through Zeke's defenses, he remained impenetrable. When Zeke started to attack and was about to end the fight, Eleanor pulled out her magic, which was an ice shield glaze freeze. Zeke understood why they called her the Ice Queen. The ice spread to his hands and made him throw his shield. Eleanor smiled, admiring his reflex action. The knights were surprised to see Eleanor happy since she is usually a cold girl. Zeke was amazed that Eleanor could use magic and wield a sword at the same time. He was glad to meet someone like her, who was one level ahead. Eleanor then replied that it is simple to become like her if he works hard. It was unusual for Eleanor to fight with her full strength, but she had decided to end the game with one blow. She surrounded Zeke with ice and trapped him so he couldn't escape. Zeke had no way out as he was surrounded by ice, and he had left his defense shield outside. But things didn't end up as expected, as Eleanor flew to Zeke with her sword pointing to him. Zeke managed to defend with his bare hands. Zeke won the game just by defending. Everyone watching was surprised when they saw Zeke won. Eleanor admitted that she was defeated, Zeke also acknowledged that she is a strong opponent. After some days, Eleanor comes to where Zeke resides. The people there couldn't believe that a knight came over the barracks of the guard and was wearing a dress. She asked where Zeke was. She then told him that she was feeling attracted to him, so she asked him to marry her. Excuse me? What the f just happened? Anyway, new waifu acquired. After Zeke left, the Crimson Lotus Fong was never the same. They struggled to succeed in high-level quests as they used to when Zeke was with them. Nihat decided to take on a mission that was much higher than their rank. The monsters had complete control over them, and despite Nihat's efforts to win, they were losing the fight. His two teammates had already lost hope. Ever since Zeke's son was expelled from the Crimson Lotus Fong, the team had been failing quests frequently. If they failed this quest, they feared that no one would ever trust them again. The guild might even kick them out. This mission was their last chance to prove themselves as a team and to continue together. Even though they fought with all their might, the monsters still had the upper hand in the battle. Hannah's magic had no effect. She called on Irene for support as she cast teleportation magic. However, if the fight persisted like this, they feared no one would survive. But Hannah stated that they couldn't continue with their bodies weakened like this, fearing that at this rate, everyone would be killed. If they failed, with the Crimson Lotus Fong unavailable, they would have nowhere to go, so he commanded them not to give up. But both teammates had already decided to abandon the fight, unwilling to die in vain. Despite Nihat's orders to return and continue fighting, they ignored him and teleported away to safety. Nihat, infuriated, demanded to know why they gave up on the quest. Hannah criticized Nihat for failing to protect their safety, even questioning his role as captain. Frustrated and angry, Nihat slapped Hannah, causing her to realize she couldn't tolerate his selfishness any longer and decided to leave him alone. Nihat found himself alone and insulted. However, Irene attempted to help Nihat, but Hannah advised her to let Nihat reflect on the situation and come to understand the truth. Both Irene and Hannah worried that the Crimson Lotus Fongs would disband. Meanwhile, Sareta was thrilled to hear about Vice Captain Eleanor's proposal to Zeke. As someone interested in love stories, particularly Zeke's, this one caught her attention. When Zeke asked Sareta about how she knew of Eleanor's proposal, Sareta revealed that Fam had informed her. Fam had been following Zeke and had witnessed Eleanor confessing her love. Sareta then asked Zeke about his response to the proposal. Zeke recalled Eleanor's proposal of marriage, to which he responded with a question. Eleanor then explained that she had developed feelings for him and asked if he knew her favorite thing. Zeke admitted that he didn't know, prompting Eleanor to realize that she was attracted to individuals stronger than herself. And after witnessing Zeke's victory over her, he became the focus of her thoughts. She inquired about her feelings towards her subordinates, to which they responded with love, leading her to realize that she was already in love with Zeke and sought an answer from him. This revelation surprised Zeke, as his primary goal was solely to protect the city. Eleanor, however, understood his point of view and decided to wait for him, even if it took a long time for him to reciprocate her feelings. She also decided to transfer back to the Guardian Court to work. Zeke didn't approve of her decision and said, "Don't you have any shame left?" Eleanor was so in love with him that her heart would not change no matter where she went. She admired him and wanted to be closer to him. Zeke planned to improve the relationship between the Guardian Corps and the Knight's Order. He explained to Eleanor that the two of them could bridge the gap between the organizations. Eleanor agreed with this idea and decided to stay at the Knight's Order to work with Zeke in protecting the city. Zeke was pleased that Eleanor understood his point of view. However, the people around were jealous of Zeke. After Zeke finished telling the proposal story, Sareta expressed her belief that Zeke had no intention of dating anyone, which made Fam feel relieved. Zeke was confused by what she meant, so Fam explained that if Zeke were to date someone, she would have to endure witnessing his romantic moments. Zeke then wondered if Fam and Sareta had ever dated anyone yet. They hesitated to respond, and Sareta admitted that while she loved hearing about other people's love stories, she hadn't considered dating anyone herself. Fam stated that her shyness prevented her from engaging in romantic relationships. Zeke concluded that the 5th Division seemed immune to love affairs. Sareta stated that only one left is Spinoza, but after witnessing Spinoza drunk and vomiting, they had already concluded that she was not involved in any romantic endeavors. Nihat snapped back to his senses as he wandered through the forest and suddenly encountered several harpies. With no other option, Nihat decided to fight them, but no matter how much he swung his sword, the harpies easily dodged his slashes and mocked him with their laughter. As the harpies continued to taunt him and attack with their claws, Nihat couldn't help but wonder why everything had become so difficult after Zeke left. He questioned whether it was his fault or the fault of someone who could only stand by. Suddenly, Nihat's sword broke in half, leaving him defenseless against the harpies' assault. He found himself on the brink of death until an unknown creature appeared and swiftly killed the harpies. Curious about the creature's identity, Nihat asked who it was. The unknown creature simply responded, "Your ally. Drink this," the creature instructed, offering Nihat a substance. As Nihat drank it, he pondered the creature's words. "All the people who made you miserable, you must resent them all. Those who have looked down on you, laughed at you, harmed you. Only then will you gain new strength." Slowly, Nihat recalled a past incident where the Crimson Lotus Fong completed a quest, but guild members gossiped about how Zeke carried their party. This made Nihat furious, angry, and jealous. Out of fury, he scolded the guild members, claiming that Zeke was just a useless scarecrow who was only beneficial when he was with them. When Zeke approached, curious about the commotion, Nihat stated that they were gossiping about how bad Zeke was and how they had to carry him, to which Zeke acknowledged without any response. This further infuriated Nihat, causing him to see Zeke as annoying. So annoying. In the guild house, Hannah and Irene returned, apologizing to the receptionist for coming back empty-handed and failing to complete the quest. Hannah pleaded with the receptionist not to disband the Crimson Lotus Fong for the time being, assuring her that Nihat would calm down. However, as if on cue, something burst through the door, emanating a demonic aura. Hannah sensed the power and immediately told Irene to run. But it was too late. The entity grabbed Hannah's wrist, and she couldn't break free. As the smoke cleared, she realized that the person before her was Nihat, transformed into his demon form. The next day, Zeke found it strange that no monsters were attacking the city, as they usually did every 2 hours. Spinoza thought it was a welcome break, suggesting they rest and go out for a drink. However, Pham had a bad feeling about it. Suddenly, Hannah and Irene approached them. Zeke wondered what had happened to them and asked about Nihat's whereabouts. Hannah explained to Zeke that Nihat had attacked them. In another scene, Nihat grabbed Hannah's wrist. Irene quickly shot an arrow at Nihat, warning him not to harm Hannah. Other guild members intervened, attacking Nihat from behind, only to realize it was him. Nevertheless, they urged Hannah, Irene, and the receptionist girl to leave, assuring them they would handle the situation. As the receptionist and Irene carried Hannah away, she contemplated whether Nihat's transformation was her fault. Nihat easily dispatched the other guild members and approached Hannah and Irene, suggesting they return to the Crimson Lotus Fongs. The receptionist urged Hannah and Irene to trust Zeke and quickly meet him. With her remaining mana, she began casting teleportation magic on them. Nihat attempted to stop them from teleporting by attacking the receptionist girl, but the receptionist girl managed to teleport them away. Furious at their escape, Nihat vowed to kill them when he found them. Back in the present, Hannah shared her guilt over Nihat's corruption and her decision to leave the team. She felt responsible for implicating everyone in Estol's guilt. Zeke reassured her that it wasn't her fault and suggested that something else triggered Nihat's transformation. Hannah revealed that Nihat was targeting not only them but also Zeke, urging him to hide. However, Zeke, as the gatekeeper, refused to flee and promised to protect Hannah. He showed resilience in the face of frequent monster attacks. Hannah wondered why Zeke didn't seem to harbor any resentment towards her. Zeke explained that he had moved past the past and understood that their actions were driven by the need to protect themselves and their teammates. He vowed never to forget what happened, but also recalled the warm welcome Hana had given him when he first joined the party, reminiscing about their good times together. They used to support each other and work toward common goals, but as they gained wealth and fame, their friendship drifted apart. Zeke used to believe that if he were the one to leave the party, those who remained would be happy as before. However, things didn't go as expected, and he felt responsible for how he handled his last conversation with Nihat. He expressed his determination to stop Nihat if he came to attack and asked both Hana and Irene to lend him their power. Suddenly, Hana apologized to Zeke, surprising him. She clarified that she wanted to repay him for everything and apologized for her past decision to kick him out of the party. Zeke forgave them both, acknowledging that everyone makes mistakes and that he himself was not perfect. He was glad to be able to talk to them again like this, and Hana appreciated Zeke's continued generosity. Irene suddenly barged into the conversation, recounting a day when she saw Zeke carefully studying the recruitment board while Hana stood next to Nihat at the guild. Hana abruptly stopped Irene from continuing. Confused by the interruption and wondered about the day, Zeke suggested that they had talked enough and should rest. He then reported the situation to the chief, who knew that the Night Order wouldn't offer any help. Zeke speculated that Nihat intended to attack Astaroth, prompting the need for a solid defense and stronger offense. He pondered who would be better suited for the task. Meanwhile, Eleanor was feeding and petting a cat when Zeke suddenly appeared. Surprised, Eleanor asked why he was there and if he had seen what she was doing before. Zeke complimented her soft demeanor and assured her there was nothing to be ashamed of, acknowledging her care for the cat and her attractiveness. Eleanor sensed that Zeke had more than compliments in mind and asked what he wanted. Zeke explained that he needed her help with a certain issue. He wanted to leverage Eleanor's status to command some knights to aid him. She knew that Captain Gregor might not take kindly to such actions, putting her position at risk. Despite the risks, Zeke trusted her, and with some persuasion and riz, Eleanor agreed to help him. She insisted that if she were to be kicked out of the Night Order, he would have to take responsibility for her. Zeke agreed with her. Eleanor misinterpreted this as Zeke agreeing to marry her, much to the amusement of the other members of the 5th Division who thought she was overthinking. Feeling prepared for the impending battle with Nihat, Zeke was ready perfectly. 2 days later, as the demon race launched their attack, everyone prepared for battle. Zeke led his team ready to face the impending conflict. To Zeke's surprise, Hana and Irene also joined the fray, stating that they had to contribute despite not being fully recovered, and expressing their trust in Zeke to protect them once again. As they gazed at the sky, they realized that Nihat was indeed there, and they braced themselves for the confrontation. Nihat declared that he should have killed Zeke from the start. Nihat, ordered by the High Demon, was tasked with stealing the Orb of Light. However, Nihat ignored the order and grew angry when he saw Hana and Irene joining Zeke's side. He commanded the demons to destroy everything in their path, including the citizens and stealing the Orb of Light. Eager to test Zeke's abilities as a gatekeeper, Nihat taunted Zeke's team along with the flying demons, mocking their supposed inability to fight back. Unfazed by their mockery, Zeke and his team prepared to confront them head-on, with the chief ordering his men to support Zeke at all costs. Unexpectedly, Zeke used Iron Target to draw all the flying demons towards him, allowing his team to attack while they were grouped together. They easily defeated most of the flying demons, while the defense troops prepared to summon Star Platinum to combat the remaining demons. As Nihat observed Zeke's new team in action, with Sareta, Spinoza, Fam, Defense Troop, Night Order, Eleanor, if this goes on, they will all be destroyed. He felt a sense of jealousy and disdain towards them, considering them to be useless. However, the demons confessed that they were unable to carry out Nihat's orders, as Zeke had the ability to manipulate their minds, always drawing their attention towards his shield and absorbing their attacks. Nihat found himself reflecting on the past moments with Zeke, recalling the mission where, despite Nihat's efforts, Zeke seemed sluggish and ineffective in battle. Even when Nihat defeated a wolf, it was Zeke who received all the praise and recognition, leaving Nihat feeling overlooked and frustrated. In a fit of anger, Nihat unintentionally unleashed a powerful flame magic, killing some demons. He yelled Zeke's name, to which Zeke calmly responded. inviting Nihat to face him one-on-one. Despite Nihat's mocking, Zeke remained composed and urged Nihat to hurry. Descending to confront Zeke, Nihat attempted to strike him with a punch, but Zeke effortlessly blocked it with his shield, although the force sent him flying. Witnesses were impressed by Nihat's display of strength in pushing Zeke down, realizing that Nihat was no longer human. Undeterred, Nihat continued his barrage of punches, but Zeke steadfastly defended himself with his shield. Nihat removing Zeke's shield, Nihat launched an uppercut punch, only to find Zeke unaffected. Zeke calmly questioned, "Are you satisfied yet?" Surprised, Nihat delivered a serious punch to which Zeke responded in kind. Their fists collided, resulting in Nihat's arm being destroyed by Zeke's punch. Witnesses marveled at Zeke's ability to defeat the demon race with his bare hands. Zeke pondered why things had come to this, reminiscing about the good times they once shared. However, Nihat, consumed by fury, told Zeke to be silent and launched another powerful punch at him. Once again, Zeke managed to block Nihat's attack. Nihat asserted his superiority over Zeke, but his body began to crumble, revealing that he couldn't withstand the dark magic any longer. Zeke urged Nihat to stop using it, warning that it would lead to his demise. Ignoring Zeke's plea, Nihat persisted with the dark magic and aimed another punch at Zeke, only for Zeke to effortlessly capture his fist. Nihat blamed others and Zeke for the downfall of the Crimson Lotus Fang, but Zeke disagreed, emphasizing that their strength came from all members, including Hannah, Irene, Zeke, and Nihat. Zeke acknowledged their collective efforts and sacrifices, stating that they were the team's blade, always striving and achieving success together. He expressed gratitude for their role in his growth and strength, reflecting on his commitment to protect them, which motivated his rigorous training and the development of skills like Iron Target. In essence, Zeke thanked them for making him stronger than ever before. However, Nihat refused to listen to what he deemed as nonsense, telling Zeke to stop with his talk no jutsu. Despite this, Zeke persisted, stating that they were once equals, and their camaraderie would never change, even though Nihat had joined the demon race. Nihat expressed his hatred towards Zeke for his emotionless acceptance of everything, even Nihat's mistakes. He resented that Zeke never insulted him, despite his animosity towards him, and this fueled Nihat's desire to kill Zeke. Acknowledging that Zeke's presence helped them fight effectively, Nihat felt bitter that Zeke was always the one who received recognition. He feared being unrecognized by others, and thus ignored everything Zeke said, retreating into himself. In a moment of realization, Nihat knelt down and apologized to Zeke. Though Zeke forgave him, Nihat admitted that he still despised his attitude. He hoped that Zeke would convey his apologies to Hannah and Irene. As Nihat crumbled away into dust, they won the battle, defeating Nihat, but lost a comrade in the process. Boo! So sad. Yeah, no sympathy for that guy. Nobody gives a shit about Nihat's death.